There are women who walk through the world as if carrying within them a story that began long before they were born. They do not entirely belong to the present time. There is in them a silence that observes, a wisdom not learned from books, but from invisible crossings. Carl Jung said that certain souls bring to the surface the memory of the collective unconscious. Echoes of lives, symbols and pains that are not only personal, but deeply human. These women feel what the world has already forgotten. While many chase after goals and noise, they listen to what moves beneath the sound. A quiet, almost inaudible calling for authenticity, meaning and presence. There is in them an inexplicable longing, as if they remembered a place they have never visited. A remembrance of the soul's primordial home. Perhaps you recognize yourself in this. Perhaps you have felt that something in you sees too much, feels too deeply, understands before it can explain. Perhaps you've asked yourself, why am I different? Why does what satisfies others never feel enough for me? These questions are not flaws, but signs. Doors opening toward the ancient wisdom that lives within you. In this video, we will explore 12 signs that reveal the presence of the old soul in the feminine, not as a spiritual label, but as a way of remembering what has always been there. The truth of who you are when you finally let go of the masks. If at any moment something resonates deeply, share in the comments. I recognize myself. These words are not affirmation. They are return. A return to the part of you that has always known. Chapter 1. The hunger for meaning and the path of individuation. There is a silent restlessness that follows the woman with an old soul. She wakes each morning with a question that never leaves her. What does all this truly mean? It is not intellectual curiosity. It is thirst. A thirst that cannot be quenched by achievement, recognition, or comfort. While the world offers visible rewards, she yearns for something invisible, coherence between soul and life. Carl Jung said that every soul entering the process of individuation begins with this discomfort. The old structure of the ego, molded to adapt to the world, no longer fits, and the self, the deepest center of being, begins to call. That calling rarely arrives as answers. It comes as a quiet erosion of certainties. What once held meaning now dissolves, and what is new has not yet been born. The woman with an old soul feels herself between worlds, the old one crumbling, the new still unnamed. She searches through books, travels spiritual paths, and encounters for something that brings her back to herself. But what she seeks is not outside. It is buried deep within her own consciousness. The old soul is like a deep mine, and every crisis is a tunnel leading to a vein of inner gold. Jung called this movement the symbolic descent, the necessary dive into the shadowy and unconscious layers of being. It is not an escape from the world, but the courage to face it from within. Meaning is not found above, but below, in the integration of light and shadow, reason and mystery. And here the first sign reveals itself. She does not flee from the question, "Who am I?" even when she fears the answer. Her search for meaning is, in truth, a search for wholeness. Every loss, every disillusionment, every silence the world fails to understand, all become raw material for the soul. The second sign arises naturally from this descent, a resonance with the eternal, a feeling of recognizing places, symbols, or cultures she has never lived, yet that awakens something ancestral within her. It's as if, when gazing at a landscape, something in her body whispers, "I remember." It is not a linear memory, it is archetypal remembrance. The collective unconscious touches her most subtle fibers, revealing that the soul carries stories far greater than the biography. These women do not study Jung out of curiosity. They feel that he describes the map they have long been walking in silence. Individuation, becoming who one truly is, becomes her destiny, not a project, but a way of being. Chapter 2. Embodied compassion and calm in the eye of the storm. The woman with an old soul doesn't just feel, she perceives. She perceives the suffering of others as if a part of herself were vibrating along with them. It is not excessive sensitivity, but a deep knowing. Everything is connected. Carl Jung said that when we dive into our own shadow, we discover not only what is ours, but what belongs to all humanity. Pain ceases to be personal. It becomes universal. Thus, when she sees someone suffer, there is no judgment. She recognizes the mirror. What the other carries, she too has felt at some point. Her compassion is not performative or pitying. It is natural, almost inevitable. It flows from her like spring water, clear, silent, and constant. But this gift has a price. Feeling too much can also be exhausting. The heart of the old soul expands so widely that sometimes it feels as though it can no longer fit inside her body. And it is at this point that the third sign appears. She has compassion for the world without losing herself in it. There is a wisdom that matures through pain, knowing when to embrace and when to simply witness. She has learned that she cannot save everyone, but she can remain present, and sometimes that is the greatest act of love. Her empathy seeks no applause. It is a natural response to the awareness that the other is not separate from herself. From this depth arises the fourth sign, a serenity that intrigues. Even in the midst of crises, loss, and chaos, something at her center remains unshaken. Jung called this inner strength the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposites without breaking. The woman with an old soul understands that chaos, too, is part of the dance. She does not deny suffering, but welcomes it as part of the invisible order of life. While the world panics, she becomes a silent axis, not because she is cold, but because she has walked so many times through the valley of shadows that she has learned to trust the light dwelling beneath it all. She knows that everything passes, even despair. And that certainty is not blind faith but spiritual memory, the remembrance of how many times life has already begun again, even after ruin. Others are intuitively drawn to her when storms arrive. They feel her presence brings calm, even without words. It's as if her very being carries the memory that there is something indestructible within every human soul. She doesn't offer answers, she offers presence, and presence heals what words cannot reach. Chapter 3. Vision beyond time and the sacredness of solitude. There is a kind of vision that cannot be learned, only remembered. The woman with an old soul sees what has not yet been born. She perceives the subtle movements that precede great changes. While the world reacts to symptoms, she grasps the invisible meaning behind events. Carl Jung called this archetypal sensitivity, the ability to perceive symbols rising from the collective unconscious before they take form. This perception makes her a visionary, but also a solitary being. Often when she tries to share what she sees, the world does not understand. She is called a dreamer, eccentric, or simply too much. But she knows, consciousness always arrives first in the invisible and only later manifests in time. That's why she has learned the value of silence. Not everything seen needs to be spoken. Not every truth is ready to be heard. This is the fifth sign. She walks ahead of her time, carrying visions that seem strange until the day they become obvious. She does not seek to prove anything. She simply observes, trusts, and continues. And in the distance this creates, the sixth sign is born, the vital need for solitude. The woman with an old soul does not fear silence. She seeks it as one returning home. In solitude, the world's noise dissolves, and the soul begins to speak its native language again. While many associate being alone with a lack of love, she knows solitude is the space where true love flourishes, the kind born from meeting oneself. Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. In solitude she awakens." There she understands she is not isolated, but united with the whole more deeply than any companionship could offer. In her quiet room, or walking under the twilight sky, she speaks with the invisible, not through words, but through presence. The modern world, with its rush and screens, rarely understands this kind of retreat, but for the old soul, withdrawal is a ritual of survival. Each moment of solitude is energetic cleansing, a return to the source. Without these intervals, she fragments. With them, she returns to harmony. For her, solitude is not absence but fullness. It is the space where the I dissolves and the self emerges, reminding her there is no separation between the human and the divine. And when she returns to others, she brings with her what the world has lost: serenity, clarity, and a quiet wisdom that reconnects others with the essential. Chapter 4. Essential simplicity and bridges between life's extremes. In a world that measures value by what is accumulated, the woman with an old soul walks in the opposite direction, not out of rebellion, but by nature. She has already realized that everything external eventually dissolves. The shine of possessions, the prestige of titles, even the certainties that once seemed solid. There is within her a serene lucidity, an awareness that the essential can never be bought. This is the seventh sign, a detached relationship with the material world. She does not reject beauty, but she recognizes that true abundance lies in presence. A sunset can nourish her more deeply than any feast. An authentic conversation can mean more than an award. Carl Jung said that the mature human being stops seeking outside what can only be found within. And this is precisely the wisdom that blooms in the heart of the old soul. She has learned that happiness is not possession, it is vibration. Instead of accumulating, she simplifies. Every object she releases, every relationship that dissolves, every expectation that falls away, all create space for something lighter and truer. Simplicity becomes her form of prayer. And it is within this uncluttered space, free of excess, that the eighth sign reveals itself. Her natural affinity with the two ends of existence, children and elders. Both reflect what she values most: purity and wisdom, the two poles of the same circle. Children, with their spontaneity, remind her of what it means to live unmasked. Elders, with their silences, remind her of what it means to live in acceptance. Between these two poles, she finds her vocation to be a bridge, to be the meeting point through which the spirit both plays and reflects, dreams and remembers. She speaks with children without condescension, soul to soul, recognizing in them a wisdom older than language. And when she is with the elderly, she feels as though standing before a mirror of the future, a glimpse of what she too will become. Jung said that the unconscious is timeless. Within it, childhood and old age touch. Perhaps that is why the old soul understands both shores. She lives at a point where time bends back upon itself. These encounters remind her of the value of the present moment. Children live in the now because they have not yet known the weight of the past. Elders dwell there because they have learned the futility of resisting what has been. Between these two teachings, she learns the secret of lightness, presence, to be holy in each gesture, even the simplest. Brewing tea, listening to a song, lighting a candle, becomes a sacred act. Chapter 5. Organic spiritual hunger and the eyes that see within. There is a hunger that does not arise from the body. It is a longing for the invisible, a thirst for truth that no institutional religion can contain. The woman with an old soul feels this hunger early in life, even before she has words to name it. It is not a search for comfort or salvation. It is a spiritual instinct, as natural as the urge to breathe. Carl Jung said that the human being has an innate need for numinous experience. the direct encounter with the sacred, not as dogma, but as presence. This need is not fulfilled by the beliefs of others. She must feel it, live it, embody the mystery. That is why the old soul moves among traditions without becoming bound to any. She finds fragments of truth in them all, and by uniting them within herself, she creates a living, pulsing, personal spirituality. This is the 9th sign, an organic spirituality, not a collection of rituals, but a way of being in the world with reverence. For her, meditation may mean watching the wind. Prayer may mean listening to someone in silence. She recognizes the divine in the details, in the texture of a leaf, the breath of an animal, the gaze of a stranger. The sacred is no longer a distant place. It has become the very ground beneath her feet. And from this awareness blooms the 10th sign, the eyes that see from within. There is something in the eyes of the woman, with an old soul that time cannot erase, a light that does not come from innocence, but from understanding. Jung said that the eyes reveal the presence of the self, the center of the psyche that touches the eternal. Thus, when someone meets her gaze, they feel truly seen. There is no judgment and only recognition. She sees beyond the persona, into that intimate territory where we are all vulnerable, contradictory, and yet divinely human. Many avoid her gaze, for it reveals what was hidden. Others seek it, for there they feel, perhaps for the first time, understood. Her presence is like a mirror of the soul, returning to others the image of what they could be if they were not afraid to see themselves. But this gift was not born from purity, but from passage. Before seeing others, she had to face her own shadow. She descended into the basements of the psyche, faced fear, pride, guilt, and in integrating it all, her eyes changed. They began to reflect compassion instead of defense. The old soul has learned that to truly see another is also to accept their darkness. Chapter 6. Sharp intuition and reading the human nature. There is a kind of knowledge that does not pass through the mind. It arrives before reasoning, silent, like a wind shifting direction before the storm. The woman with an old soul knows this movement well. It is the whisper of her intuition, the 11th sign. Carl Jung described intuition as one of the 4 functions of consciousness, the one that perceives hidden possibilities and senses what has not yet manifested. For the old soul, this gift is as natural as breathing. She knows when something is wrong, even when everything appears right. She feels when she must leave, even if the whole world tells her to stay. There is no logic to explain it, only a deep certainty, an inner compass pointing to the invisible north of the soul. But this sensitivity requires courage. In a world that idolizes proof and dismisses the invisible, following one's intuition is a sacred act of rebellion. The woman with an old soul has learned, often the hard way, that ignoring this voice comes at a high cost. Each time she silences it to please others, she becomes a little ill. Each time she forces herself to justify the inexplicable, she loses a fragment of her truth. So, with time, she has learned to trust, even when she doesn't understand. She acts without knowing exactly why, but something within her recognizes the path. This trust in the unseen is what Jung would call psychological faith, surrendering to the wisdom that rises from the unconscious, from the self that sees the whole while the ego perceives only parts. And from this expanded perception arises the 12th sign, a profound understanding of human nature. The woman with an old soul sees through masks with disarming ease. She perceives the fear behind arrogance, the cry for love behind anger, the fragility sustaining control. She does not need people to confess. Their bodies speak, their eyes reveal, their silence explains. This lucidity does not make her superior. It makes her more compassionate. She knows what it is to hide from one's own suffering. She knows how the ego builds walls to protect what is not yet ready to be healed, and so she does not judge. She simply sees, and in seeing, she embraces. But seeing so much also carries weight. At times, her perception is so sharp that the world becomes too noisy. She must withdraw so as not to drown in the vibrations she feels from others. Jung said that those who see deeply must have roots equally deep. That is why the old soul seeks silence as one seeks shelter, to avoid drowning in what she absorbs. Suggested practice: before sleep, close your eyes and recall a moment when you followed your intuition without evidence. Ask yourself, what within me knew before I knew? Recognize that voice. It is the language of the self, the way the infinite communicates with you. Agora já coloquei o esquinomo para lavar. At the end of this journey, the woman with an old soul does not see herself as someone special. She merely recognizes what has always been silent within her, a consciousness that observes the world without being entangled by it. Jung said that the true mark of spiritual maturity is humility before the mystery, knowing that, no matter how much we understand, infinite veils still lie behind every answer. The old soul lives within this space of reverence. She does not seek to be understood, she seeks to be true. She no longer needs to prove her worth, for she has learned that the value of the soul does not depend on others' eyes, but on the integrity with which one walks their own path. She does not wish to teach, she wishes to remind that there is wisdom in silence, purpose in pain, and beauty in continuing even without guarantees. These 12 signs are not trophies or spiritual titles. They are flowers that bloom naturally in the soil of those who choose to live awake. And if you recognized yourself in any of them, perhaps life is inviting you to honor what has always been yours. The courage to be whole in a world that prefers halves. There are others like you, old souls walking in silence, sustaining light in the densest hours, guardians of a knowledge that time cannot erase. Your difference is not a flaw, it is a calling. The world needs exactly what you carry. If these words have touched something within you, share in the comments which sign spoke to you most deeply. And remember, the old soul did not come to be understood. She came to remind the world of what it has forgotten.